Okay, it says that we are live, which means we may or may not be. So let me go ahead and hear some 5x5s in the chat if everything sounds and looks good. And when I say looks good, I mean the video quality itself, because we all know that everything else related to looks right here is very questionable. So I am already seeing 5x5, so I like that. My coffee cup tonight, RLRL, is just a standard issue coffee mug, but I guess in other states it might be considered like a high capacity coffee mug. So I don't know what you want to say in regards to that, but what I will say is that some interesting things happening in the world right now, especially with everything going on in a lot of other countries, but as well as our own. And there's some things we definitely should talk about just because we got to be ready. I mean, there's just so much going on that we have to at least keep some of these things in mind and do our best to prepare. And then, panic's not going to help us, but at the same time, there should be some urgency at this point in time. And if I don't have a better way to get people involved with preparedness than just by sharing what's happening right now in the world, then I'm not really sure where else to turn, because there's so many examples as to why we need to be prepping that I feel it's almost a lost cause if I can't open your eyes to all of this stuff that's happening. I mean, it's just out of control. But one thing I will say is that my biggest concern, and probably what will affect us the most out of any of the problems happening right now, is the fact that everything is going to get very expensive. And that's actually probably the worst part of everything that's going on, because I can't afford a lot of things already, and it's already expensive, but it's going to get even more expensive, and that's going to hurt us because we can't afford everything already. So I do want to say we get hello to some people here in the chat. I got Exile Reviews. Dale Cobb is here. Oi de Turiant is here. We've got Paul Gorecki. Let's see here. Mr. Dosen High, or Dosun High. I'm going to try my best anyway. A bow and a fishing rod. The ability to get food is important. Sure thing. But I would never rely on wild game as your main source of sustenance, just because it's very unreliable. Let's see here. MacBean Scottish Fitness. Hello. Good to see you. Welcome to My Life is here as well. Good evening. So yes, a lot of you are here, and I really appreciate that. And there's a lot of amazing people here. I do want to say thank you for hanging out with me 2 weeks ago at the 100K celebration. But I did need to take last week off for obvious reasons. And then it's nice to be back here and get back to our routine, especially with everything going on in the world. Okay. So look, relevance matters, but we can get caught up in a lot of things. And one thing that I've seen going on lately, this is something that we should all self-reflect on a little bit, but here in the preparedness community, as well as just on the internet, which is quite a place, everybody is using different justifications to either shift focus or care about one thing and not about the other, or to explain why some things matter and other things don't. And I think that in reality, we need to be very clear with the concept that everything matters right now. Lots of it's intertwined. And then if we just try to brush things off as not being a big deal just because of our own personal bias against the situation, it might come back to bite us in the ass. And I do want to say that in that way, because it's an issue that I've seen quite a bit of lately. We have to be paying attention to a lot of things all at once, not just one or the other. So just try to keep an open mind to these things, because I think it's a good idea to keep all options available. Okay. And I do want to say thank you, Destiny Troll. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a long time. 1 week is all it takes to feel that that yearning to get back together and have these conversations, I guess. So, and I guess yearning was the best vocabulary word my brain could come up with in that moment. Here we are, I guess. I need more coffee, apparently. So let's go ahead and start talking about what is up in the world. And then my voice just turned into Seth Rogen as well, and I don't like that at all. Okay. So clearly we have a lot of things going on. Yes, Chris Green, apparently YouTube flags that word. So he was trying to get us all to join the Pen 15 Club for some reason. But let me go ahead and jump over here. Okay, so obviously the thing right now, and this is just what's going on right now, right? Here we are. These are the live updates. We're talking about a blitzkrieg type attack could begin as early as 8 p.m. tonight, which already happened because they're referring to Eastern Standard Time. And all the leaders of the UN are coming together to try to brainstorm on how to approach this situation. There's a lot of moving parts here. Let's see. We have, Russia declaring the independence of Donetsk and Luhansk, I think is the best way to say it, or at least for what I can pull off. And either way, basically, there's a lot of Russian-backed separatists or nationalists or whatever you want to call them in those regions. And now Russia's saying that they're actually their own independent states, which obviously is going to lead to more issues. And then peacekeepers are on their way, and all the things that we've been talking about are on their way. Okay. And Paul Gorecki, thank you for the coffee. I appreciate it. I will definitely drink more any day of the week. So this is also something we'll kind of keep an eye on throughout tonight's chat, because clearly these are things that are happening right now. And unfortunately, at least just in my opinion, and based on what's been going on over the last 2 years, the leadership around the world, not just in the United States or Canada or anywhere else in North America, but in general, worldwide leadership is in a bad spot lately. It seems that there's a lot of weakness around the world. It seems that there's a lot of toeing the line. There's a lot of just going with the flow. And I feel like, if we are going to look at these other foreign entities as bad actors, then they're realizing that this is their opportunity, because the rest of the world is just not up to par. I feel like that's how they assume it. Anyway. And I think we're seeing a lot of that unfold right now. I think we know a lot of that's been going on for a long time now. So these are the things that are happening right now. And I just think that we have to keep an eye on it, even if it's unlikely to turn into some sort of, World War III scenario. I still feel like, because the possibility exists, that it's still an important subject for us to maintain a close eye on. And that's just my personal feelings here. And one thing I do want to mention, this is something that I guess I haven't really addressed as well, maybe throughout my videos or whatever it is, but a lot of people will say, hey, you said to go get all your gas the other weekend and nothing happened that weekend. And of course, that's the best case scenario. But something we need to consider, and this is what I want to talk to you guys about really quick, is that I share what, my feelings and my thoughts and opinions on certain situations are, more so than just telling you exactly what's happening. And I also prepare in the same way that I talk about here on the channel. So if I'm going out to fill up my gas tanks, it would be a disservice for me to go ahead and you guys are hearing audio, because that doesn't make any sense at all.
In condemning aggression,
give me 1 second here. Let me try something.
And
if that's the case,
the territorial integrity.
Can you hear me now? And if you guys can hear me, let me know. If the audio just muted, I need to know that as well.
Respect its obligations under the charter.
Oh, it must. Oh, I got it. It's the ad on the damn. Okay, hold on. Thanks, Fox News. Always doing something to me over here. Boom. There we go. I think we're good now. Okay. You guys can still hear me? Okay, I thought I got rid of the ad, so I'm still confused. Let's get rid of this. Boop. All right, nice and easy. We'll take care of it. All right, so here's the thing. My audio is muted, so I don't have an echo for you guys coming from my speakers. So I didn't hear that the ad was playing. So maybe that is something I have to address here soon. Either way, I'm here for you. So thanks for letting me know. Now, at the end of the day, we'll get back on that page again just to kind of see if any other live updates are coming through. Clearly, there's a possibility of a blitzkrieg type attack, I guess. And these are things they're going to keep throwing out there. But what I was trying to say before all this is that I'm just going to always share with you my feelings and what I'm preparing for. And if something doesn't happen, that's a best case scenario. But let me tell you something, and this is going to be from a point of view of somebody who used to live somewhere that was a little bit different than where I live now. But it's easy to be in the camp of nothing's going to happen. It's like being progressive in San Francisco, right? It's easy to be in that camp because everyone else is going to generally agree with you. And most of the time you're going to be right on the grand scheme of things, in the sense of being surrounded by your peers and things not actually happening, and then being able to say, see, I told you this was exactly what was going to happen. And look, it's easy to be in that camp. And sometimes, or most of the time, you're probably going to be right. So for a skeptic and for somebody who worries about preparing for some of these situations, I find it to be better to err on the side of caution and say, this could happen. And so if it might happen, I'm going to go ahead and approach it as if it's a real threat. And then if it never comes to fruition as being a threat, then thank God. And I'll go ahead and just go back to my daily life. So I do want to share that with you all, because I think there's a lot of misconception as to like, hey, I don't know, like nothing really happened with Cyber Polygon, and you said it could be a big deal. Well, first off, we don't know if nothing happened from there. But second off, it could have been a big deal. And if it's not, thank God. That's all it comes down to. So I wanted to go ahead and talk about that. But either way, and thank you so much, Chris Barnes. I really appreciate it. So Tom Muse says, admit it, Russia will roll through without opposition. Now, this is something that we've talked about before, fait accompli, which is something that is a military term for winning the battle before it starts. And in many ways, that's what I feel is also probably happening over there. Because basically, if you go head on with NATO forces to stop a Russian incursion, you are now in an active hot conflict versus all this talk we're hearing is sanction this, sanction that. We're going to ruin the ruble and all these things. And it's like they clearly don't care. Why would they care what the Western world thinks in the sense of what, we could do to their economy? They'll just figure out their own way to get around it or do whatever they have to do to make it a little bit more beneficial for them and their friends. Okay. So moving on from there, because we're talking about it now. Okay. So I had some other news stories brought up as well, but I want to make sure that we are hitting all the nails on the head tonight. So here is one that I think is clearly going to be an issue for us. And I do know, yes, I just recently watched the new Canadian Prepper video that came out. And, we're going to touch on some of those same subjects because I had a lot of this ready from earlier today. But yes, the Russian market crashes instead of cracks. You got to love all these, professional editors and writers out there that get to just get by with all these mistakes. But the Russian, is this ad really happening right now? You guys got to tell me. I can't hear it actually if something's happening. So these are things that I got to pay attention to. So hold on, I'm going to figure out the better way to set this up so I don't have to worry about echo. Okay, so basically at the end of the day, 17% market crash is huge, and this is going to cause a ripple effect throughout the world one way or the other. And honestly, we all know that economics is going to be a big driver when it comes to any actual conflict in the world. So if these things are escalating to the point that we're being told they are, and we're seeing market fluctuations in this type of volume, then we're going to expect to see more volatility because what do you do if you're a country whose economy was just wrecked overnight due to the concept of moving into a hot conflict? I mean, you tell me. I have my own thoughts, of course. So, and, so in the chat, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, but Oidatudiant, okay, because you're here all the time and we get along. It's all good. But you say, nothing is going to happen. It's all smoke and mirrors. And at a certain point, when is it not smoke and mirrors? I mean, when do these things affect us directly? And when you see a market crash, 70%, you're going to see some kind of a ripple effect from that, which will probably affect us at some point in time, at least economically. And honestly, financially is where it's going to hurt us the most, probably more than anything else. So either way, if nothing happens in the sense of hot conflict, we're still seeing things happening right now that could have a propensity to affect us negatively. And that's not something I want to see. Look, I know that all of us have our own financial situations and everybody could always use more money. And our money is going even less far than it used to very quickly. And that was not the best way to say that, but we're just going with it tonight. So these are things that is happening. Okay. And I do want to address a couple things later in the chat tonight, but there's a lot of misinformation about everything to the point where we're literally hurting ourselves in many ways by discounting every single thing that happens all the time. It hurts our ability to be prepared for these things to happen when we're continually, discounting them as being false or whatever else you want to call it. And B, it also shows that we can't show any solidarity towards any singular cause because every single cause has some form of compromisation that it creates an issue where you can't actually offer full support. So we're having a lot of issues here. And that's just, kind of what I'm trying to figure out as well in many ways. And that's why I'm glad I have all of you here to help keep me grounded, but also to have these conversations so we can all try our best to get back on the same page in many ways. Now, these market crashes, they're not only going to cause us problems economically, they're going to cause more volatility in that area, in that region, and they're going to create more of a reason for things to get more escalated, as we know. Money creates desperation. Anyone here who's been poor or broke to the point where they weren't sure how they're going to pay their next bill knows that feeling of stress. And when you take that on a national scale and you're already in position to enter into a war, you tell me exactly how that's going to turn out. Now, let's see here. Let's go ahead and move on to something else. All right. Now, here's the thing. I was going to talk about some of the civilians in Ukraine who are living through, shelling, and, basically they're living the life of a lot of people, like people who lived in the Middle East and a lot of other places where basically the shells go off, they have to hide, and it's a lot of duck and cover and a lot of hiding from gunfire on a regular basis. So obviously not a good position to be in as a civilian. And unfortunately, there's always going to be that collateral when you have these hot conflicts. And that's an unfortunate side effect of conflict of any kind. But that's where we are. Let's see here. Let's see. I don't know why it hid this, BM, but here you go. Sure. And, I get that some people have these feelings as well. So we see the feeling shared by BM here where it's like, the hope that just all of it crashes because we just need this reset and all of it needs to get changed one way or the other. And we might as well just see it happen. And, I can see the feeling towards wanting that because of how corrupted and ruined a lot of these systems are that we have. But unfortunately, that crash is probably going to lead to a much more dark and scary scenario than what any of us really want to live through or be prepared for, because it's going to create a really bad problem when it comes to just being human in many ways. So, there's a lot of that going on, and I get it. But at the same time, the alternatives might be better and might be worth exploring before having to go down that dark tunnel, which is definitely on its way sooner or later if things keep moving in the direction they're moving. So now, the other thing to consider is that we have other pieces in play here. Okay, there's a lot of things going on. And one thing that we have to keep in mind is that these other countries have a vested interest in supporting each other and also divesting from our system, aka the US dollar and everything else that revolves around it. So Iran, Russia, and China hold a joint naval drill amid growing ties, aka they're all building up their team and they're teaching each other, everything they know about being the man in their region. And unfortunately, these are things that are going to continue. So I wanted to just keep everybody at least aware of the fact that these other countries are also involved with a lot of these military movements, and they're also involved with each other. So if we don't expect anyone else to get involved with these situations, I think we might be being naive in many ways, because mostly, I would at least assume for Iran, Russia, and China, it would be better for them to get rid of our crap and move on with their own system. And honestly, that is exactly what they've been trying to do for quite a while now. So I think we're going to see more and more of that going on throughout the things that are happening. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the direction things are headed in. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, and the Prepping Mantis says Russia and China have been working for years to get away from the US dollar and create their systems, right? Which is why the BRICS system exists, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So these are things that we have to keep in mind. Now, we'll go ahead and get rid of this screen here. And let's just talk about a couple things that maybe people don't think of, okay? Creative123 says physical metals, okay? Physical metals are good for a lot of things, and obviously for hedging against inflation and everything else. Things like gold and silver and precious metals have had a lot of value over time. I think we all know that lead and brass seems to have a lot of value as well and can continually have value even post any SHTF or economic collapse scenario. But it's funny that we're over here, flagging things that say beaverines and stuff like that. So I don't know what the reason behind that is, but you do your thing, YouTube, I guess. So what I will say is that, yes, but when it comes to metals, we often only think of precious metals or projectile-based metals, right? But one thing that we have to also keep in mind is that with these other countries being so involved with each other and with having so much control over certain aspects of our market and our global system, we have to also keep in mind what else is very important when it comes to metals. And I know a lot of you might be thinking right now, okay, you're talking about uranium, or what are you talking about? And what we're talking about is actually lithium. And lithium is obviously huge when it comes to what we need for our rechargeables and our batteries and any modern electronics that you plug in via USB device, let's be honest. And that's a lot of our equipment. And as preppers, how much of our stuff is ran off lithium batteries? We appreciate lithium ion batteries because they can be recharged multiple times. They have a deep life cycle and they are efficient. So because of that, you have to understand that China has a big portion of the lithium market under control. And one thing that I wanted to kind of let you know about is that this is something that's going to cause problems down the road for us as well. And these other countries having access to all of this, all these resources that we need that are limited and actually are mined and not just things that are created via synthetics, are going to become more and more important and more scarce as time goes by. So here's something that's called the Lithium Valley Economic Opportunity Investment Plan. But in this article, it goes ahead and tells you that 80% of the world's raw lithium is mined in Australia, Chile, and China. Currently, China controls more than half of the world's lithium processing and refining and has 3/4 of the lithium-ion battery mega factories in the world, according to the International Energy Agency. So, and the United States has 1% of global lithium being mined and processed. Okay, so that being said, keep in mind that yes, these things, regardless of who's involved, Russia is going into Ukraine, okay, but what are their allies doing? Okay, now what are their allies going to do to maintain their level of support for those countries? It might not be as obvious as hardware and military support in the sense of going into Eastern Europe or something like that, but it could be as detrimental as limiting exports of lithium to certain countries. Look what they're doing with phosphate and look what they're doing with fertilizers in general at this point. And we all know what's going on with wheat and all the grain and everything else. So there's no reason to believe that these other exports aren't going to be limited at some point in time. And with our dependence on this technology and the fact that we need these lithium ion devices in order to be part of modern society at this point in time in many ways, they're going to have a stranglehold over that market and they can easily use it to leverage whatever it is they need. So these are issues that we have to keep in mind. Now, things to consider. And I'm going to go ahead and check really quickly here back on that live feed as to whether or not we are seeing any developments over there in the Eastern Ukraine, okay? And let's see. So far, nothing has changed here on that page. That had the lady talking quite a bit earlier, and hopefully we'll see some more updates here very soon. Obviously, we could also see some updates come in from other parts of the internet that tend to be a little bit more on top of it. But if you guys are seeing things happening over there right now, feel free to post it in the chat. And if you can't post a link, at least just mention it and say, hey, this is going on, and we can look into it together as a collective community or team here and just try to think tank our way through it. Now, Carbon Q, good to see you. Hello. Okay, so let's talk about some things happening here in our neck of the woods. There's a lot of other things that we have to keep in mind. And Irish Rebel says Venezuela has huge oil reserves, which is a plus for any ally. And that is true. And there's a reason why there's so much interest in that region. And if you didn't notice in that article about the lithium and the white gold market that China is trying to dominate, a large portion of the world's lithium deposits is in South America. So very interesting concepts that we're discussing here. So Carl Dodson, I love my tinfoil hat. Look, man, I've been wearing one for a long time. I might not be overly public about some of my theories, but what I will say is that by being skeptical and questioning the official narrative, you tend to get ahead of the game a little bit further. It's just how it works these days. And when people that used to be written off when it comes to being like, fringe, start to just be consistently correct about the things that they talked about many years ago, it starts to get you thinking about just where your information is coming from. So let's talk about this whole thing going. Now, we're not going to just only focus on Russia and Ukraine, and that's what I was trying to say at the beginning of this chat. There's things happening here, there's things happening there, there's things happening everywhere. And that's why we just brought up China and their lithium market control that they're trying to accomplish. So let's talk about this other thing that's going on right here. And this is something I wanted to bring to everyone's attention in case you weren't aware, but the fence is going back up. Now, this is in anticipation of the United States' own Freedom Convoy and the State of the Union address that's coming, I believe, March 1st. And so, you know, with how dangerous this whole Freedom Convoy situation has been, we need to put the fence back up. So these things are happening. Now, look, there's a lot of reasons why they happen the way they do. There's a lot of reasons why there is, you know, obvious double standards in many ways. But at the end of the day, I will always say, and I don't care who's in charge, I don't care if they're Republican, Democrat, or whoever it is, but fencing off the people's house, which is what these places are referred to as, seems to be a bad look, and also seems to have interesting overtones of like Orwellian literature. And I'm just not a fan of it. So the fence is going back up in preparation for this convoy. And the convoy itself is saying that, you know, they have plans on creating some kind of like a disruption within DC and creating some kind of boa constrictor-esque convoy unit going around the different freeways and everything that's in DC. I can't even speak correctly right now, apparently, but you guys understand what I'm trying to say. So the plans are there, and this is all well-known public information, but either way, fences are going up because things are getting bad. Now, you can say that a lot of these things tend to move into each other's territory, right? The fences are going up. Well, because it's Freedom Convoy. Also, I mean, is Russia about to start a war? I don't know. You tell me. Is additional fortification necessary based on anything else going on in the world? These are all possibilities. But I do want to just bring it to everyone's attention because it's just up and down, up and down. And it's just, I don't know. Like, this is the world we live in. And one thing I want to kind of throw out there when it comes to this whole preparedness thing, like one of the acronyms we throw out, right, is TEOTWAWKI, right? The end of the world as we know it. This is one that gets thrown around quite a bit. If you look in prepper videos, you know, tags that they use on YouTube, you'll find it in there because it's a relatively well-known acronym and people are looking for it sometimes. But what I will say is that the end of the world as we know it never fully had to mean an apocalypse. It didn't ever have to mean that everything was burnt to the ground and had to be reset. Sometimes it just means that we're never going to see things the way they were before all of this. And I feel like, you know, with what's going on, especially with the fact that we're putting up fences around everything in DC lately and everything with the expansion of the Capitol Police and all those kinds of things, this is just where we're going. And it's not going to be the world as we knew it back in 2019 or back in 2010 or back in 2001 or any of those things. And we all know there's a lot of different events throughout those times that have changed the face of the planet. But this is kind of where we are. And that's just something I kind of wanted to bring up and talk to everybody about. And Northern Girl Hobbies, thanks for being here. Yeah, you know what? I got great mods, but I have a few because I like to keep my circle small. So I get it, but I'm probably going to expand that a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Now, this is happening. Now, the other thing about this whole Freedom Convoy situation is that the blame is already being placed. And this is always used for all the right reasons, right? Never let a crisis go to waste. And we know that already. But here we are, you know, this is CNBC saying the protests have worsened the supply chain. And here's what it is. So at the end of the day, all I'm trying to bring to your attention regarding this whole situation is that the blame is going to be shifted to these protesters now. And they're the problem for why the supply chain is getting worse. And of course, it's just an easy scapegoat. And it's it's the easiest option, right? So here we are. And that is exactly what we're going to see happen. Carbon Q, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And it, I mean, it's unfortunate because, of course, you know, this is going to affect the supply chain. And of course, this is going to cause problems. But at the same time, the reason for this situation is because of decisions made by the leadership of these countries that are pushing people to these types of measures. So you tell me, you know, is it their fault or is it the fault of the people who are creating these mandates and everything else that people are so upset about that they're willing to cause these problems in order to get their point across? And yes, you can relate some of this to even things like BLM, right? And a lot of people are starting to have a identity crisis because they're realizing that the police state situation we talked about over the last few years is starting to become a reality. And that was always one of my concerns about a lot of these things that were going on in the world. It wasn't just like, oh, okay, you know, like, of course, Nobody likes riots, looting, or anything like that. And as soon as protests become burning of buildings and stealing of property and everything else related to that, it's no longer a protest, at least in my opinion. However, we have to keep in mind that the response to these things that eventually escalates into a militarized looking police force, which then takes things to a different level, eventually enters the realm of being a police state. And that's what we're seeing in places like Canada now. And that's what we should really be concerned about, because that is exactly where we've moved a lot of things into. And if you think that pushing out some of these veteran officers and some of these people who have been in law enforcement for many years through mandates and the like, and that pushing them out of their jobs in one way or another, and then bringing in the new recruits with some of these new understandings into place wasn't strategic in any way, then I feel like you're being naive about the grand scheme of what they're trying to accomplish. So this is just my opinion, and I think that people are starting to at least wake up to the idea that, like, regardless of the necessity of law enforcement, which I do believe in, we also have to be very concerned about the existence of a police state that puts us in a position of complete subserviency. Okay, so sorry, I just wanted to rant there for a second, but this is what's happening. They're being blamed for it. We all knew this was going to happen. And then last thing on this whole convoy situation, just for right now anyway, is let's see, here we go. Is that they are also going to be looking into all these protesters and everything and doing investigations. There's going to be financial situations and charges and everything taking place even after this whole thing's over. So they're not going to just let it go. They're not going to let everybody just go home after, I don't know, burning buildings and robbing everywhere and stuff like that. And they're going to now pursue all these people after the fact, even though everything should be technically over, right? So, and of course it's not over, I know that, but what I'm trying to say is that this is the double standard, and this is also where things are moving to and will be a permanent thing here in the future based on these different scenarios. And every time a crisis like this, and when I say crisis, I mean from their point of view, a crisis like this exists, then they learn from it and then they implement the new way next time around. And this is exactly what we're witnessing at this point in time. And this is not a good place for us to be, but we all know that this is just what it is. So okay, and then maybe I lied a little bit, everybody, but the other thing is that when it comes to the old convoy situation, here's this thing, okay? So everybody was concerned about the UN aircraft showing up in Canada, while at the same time we're seeing this, excessive policing and everything else going on. And they have lots of explanations for it, okay? And yes, UN aircraft, they get maintenance here and all these other things, okay? So here's what I want to say, okay? And I just wanted to show you guys this. There's 2 United Nations airplanes parked here, and then AKA, well, this is where they go for maintenance, and this is where some of these missions fly out of. All the reasons are there. They can justify it, sure, whatever, okay? Here's the thing I want to say when it comes to that. And Commander Corvus Corax Nevermore, thank you so much. And for some reason, I feel like you're like a Warhammer character. I feel like that's where that comes from, like Warhammer 40K maybe. Anyway, what I want to say is that the speculation of UN involvement, it always is going to exist, because we know that that's an eventuality at some point that, get that one world government going. The UN is going to be the planet-wide police force, and when we have our Operation, Moonbeam or something like that, we'll all have to run into that, and Independence Day will happen in real life finally. So, but what I want to say is that, okay, concern for the UN situation should always exist. I get that. But when there's a reasonable explanation for it, what's our situation there? Do we remain skeptical and say, okay, well, I get the reason, that's understandable, I'm still going to keep my eye out? I think that might be the right approach. But at the same time, let's not write things off as always misinformation, because here's what's happening. And this is something that I think we should realize is an attack on us as a community, and us as, the people who want to be prepared and sometimes proactive in trying to move an agenda forward in the sense of freedom and self-reliance and everything else that we care about in the preparedness community. But if you then say, okay, these UN planes are here. Okay, well, here's why they're here. I understand your concern, but they're here. Okay, but then you also say that the leaders of these protests are actually government planes. Okay, we can't really prove that one as well. Well, now there's that uncertainty. Now there's a skepticism. And then you start going into it even further. Oh, half of the protesters are actually infiltrated by the UN as well, and the police. So it's actually UN, policing UN, putting on a show for all of us to get upset about. And at a certain point, we actually take away from what it is that the Freedom Convoy is trying to accomplish, right? Whether or not you support them, I'm just trying to put that out there as the example as to what this causes. We hold back their ability to move forward because now we're saying that everybody involved is a Fed, yada, 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 right? So we have to be careful about digesting this misinformation, because how ironic is it that suddenly when these things are starting to actually gain traction and gain some kind of progression towards their end goal, that everyone in the community suddenly thinks, oh, actually, they're infiltrated by the feds and this is just a big psyop or something along those lines. These are things we have to worry about, because I feel that we're doing ourselves a disservice every single time something occurs, and then we start looking into things a little bit too far, and we don't realize that these misinformation trolls and these misinformation networks do exist and actually do try to get people like you and I to believe that something is something it's not, in order to hurt the cause that it was eventually attached to. This is just me, okay? Okay, and let's see here. So, and we have people saying things like, starting over says, the policing force that were brought in were absolutely 100% UN NATO troops, cut the BS, right? And it's like, I can't say that absolutely. And unless you went through and ID'd every single person and then gave, their information to somebody who could reference it to every single database to show that definitely they were UN troops rather than police officers of that region, I don't know how you can say that either. So all I'm trying to say is that by saying those things as being 100% fact, and then that's why this whole thing was a cover-up or whatever it is, it hurts our cause at times when it comes to wanting these things to be successful, or at least bring their position to the forefront, okay? And this is what happens. I'm just throwing it out there, guys. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings for whatever your theories are, because at the end of the day, they're still theories, right? So let's not get crazy now, okay? Everybody has their thoughts, but I mean, show me the proof and I'll believe you, because I actually am a skeptic and I don't believe the mainstream narrative either. But I'm not going to sit here and say that I know for a fact anything regarding that, because I don't. And I feel like it's very naive to assume for sure as well when you don't, and you don't. Okay, so sorry, I'm not trying to chastise anybody, but it hurts the cause many times. It just does. I don't know what else to say. The same thing for the people who say nothing's going to happen. Do you even prepare then? You don't prepare? Great. Then you're following exactly what you believe in, which is fine. But if you think something's going to happen and you do prepare, that's good too. But if you think nothing's going to happen, but you're also prepping, I don't know, man. Anyway, sorry, I got on a tangent there, but I see it happening so often. And when you run a YouTube channel, okay, when you have this comment section, you can use this analytical data, which is exactly what YouTube does, what the NSA does with all these other entities. That data tells you exactly what people are thinking about certain subjects. And this is why I bring these things up, because I'm like, man, at the end of the day, every single video I make about any subject at all, I could create a complete opposite video about, based on the information given to me within the comment section, and then say, actually, this is what really happened. And either video could be true or false based on someone's opinion, basically. Anyhow, moving on. Let's check in. I'm not seeing any updates yet on this whole thing. Okay, so U.S. calls, let's go, I'll share it with you guys just so I'm not reading it to the class, I guess is what we'll call it right this second. Trust me, I'm not a teacher. But U.S. calls Russian actions nonsense during UN Security Council emergency meeting on Ukraine, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I think about these things, okay? The U.S. said this is nonsense. Who cares? Like, what does that accomplish? What good does saying this is nonsense do? I don't understand. We look weak, and it looks pathetic to just throw words out there consistently that have no backing and no meat to them. I mean, at the end of the day, if nothing's going to happen, if this happens, you should just say it. And I mean, what do you want from me? I don't understand. So, and that's just me being critical of everything that's in the form of leadership at this point in time. And I mean that in the sense of like our entire world. It's just not good. Really needed that coffee right that second. Okay. So that's where we're at right now, okay? So this Russian blitzkrieg that could happen as soon as 8 p.m. tonight, which would have been, I think, Eastern time is what, 11 p.m. right now? Maybe it's 10. Either way, we're 2 or 3 hours past when they thought it could have started. Nobody's telling me it's happening yet, and it is what it is. But what I will say is that we should be prepared for this to cause some kind of problem, okay? We have to be prepared for it. Jerry, yeah, I have more than one side of my face. You know, I'm sorry. I set my videos up in a certain fashion because everybody else does their own thing too, and that's just what I do. But it's just part of the deal. But what I will say is that we have to understand that whether or not it's Canada, whether or not it's Ukraine, whether or not it's China, Taiwan, whether or not it is our own country, but these things are happening and they're moving forward so rapidly that we're going to feel the effect. But 2 years ago, could have said the same thing about what was going on in March of 2020, and everyone would have said, oh, nothing's going to happen, right? Well, how much are you paying for your groceries now? How much is your used car worth now? How expensive is the real estate in your area? How many people have been unemployed or changed jobs? Guess what? Everybody who got their wish finally got that minimum $15 an hour. That's not enough money now because that's how that works. It just is what it is. But this is where we are. And I feel that these examples just keep rolling in the door. And yeah, the likelihood of World War III, right, from this whole Ukraine situation is very low. At the end of the day, that's the easiest way to explain it because, most likely it's not going to turn into that. So it's easy to say that. But I will say they're looking like they're trying to do some things, and those things can turn into other things. And with what they have in regards to the energy sector of Europe and what they have in regards to resources in general, when it comes to even just agriculture, I mean, this is going to cause problems. And food is already expensive and everything is getting more expensive. And I shouldn't have to be telling anybody this because you're living it right now. So sure, nothing's going to happen. But if you want to look at how much you're spending on anything now compared to 2 years ago, I guess you could say that nothing happened. You're just spending more money now than you used to. And if that's how you want to look at it, that's fine, I guess. Let's see. Smoky Blazer. I like to see a magic get squirrely. Smart guy. I'll take it. I have a good time with getting squirrely once in a while myself, so no big deal. Kanzi, great to see you. You agree, and you can't afford any lumber for your company anymore. And lumber's been a big issue. But here's the thing. When things fade away, they're no longer front page news, and we start to think that things are going back to normal. In reality, lumber is still way too expensive and still causing ripple effects in the real estate market as well as in the ability for people to continue working. And that's a huge issue. What a lot of people aren't realizing is that, okay, so the food at your restaurant becomes more expensive. So you have to raise the prices, which means certain people can no longer afford to eat there, which means you don't have as many customers, which means you don't need as many employees, which means there's that many more people that don't have a job, which means there's that much less money being put into the economy. And that snowball effect just goes, and goes. And that is not where we want to be, but it is exactly where we are. Everybody's talking about magic now, and I like it. Blockcom, I got the magic touch, and, I'll live with that. I'm good with it. But we're all on a roll tonight. Prepper Twin Pat says so I appreciate that. Now, one thing I want to know from all of you is that when it comes to what's going on in the world right now, and something that I think you could at least tell us about it without revealing your OPSEC or anything like that. But, what is it you guys are focused on right this second? Like, if you had to choose at least like a category of preparedness, are you concerned about food? Are you concerned about long-term sustainability? Are you concerned about self-defense? Are you concerned about, fortification? Like, what is it you're working on? Because a lot of us need to figure it out. And I think this is something that we need to establish with these events moving in the direction they're going in. It's hard to kind of figure out what's the most important thing to prioritize right now. The easiest thing to say would be food. And I think that's always a good idea, but it's always a good idea. So is there anything else that anybody should be considering right this second? But I'm seeing food quite a bit. And that's because, let's be honest, with the way things are going in the sense of price and inflation and everything else, any food you buy now is going to be worth more tomorrow. Any food you buy now is going to get you more food than it will in a day or two when you spend the same money. And when I say a day or two, I know that's not accurate. You understand what I'm trying to say, though. It's just tough because we're having a hard time putting our finger on exactly what is going to be the hard thing to accomplish or acquire here very soon. I did see somebody say insulin for their diabetic daughter. Let's see, Musafer Nation said that. So, and those are things I would definitely be considering. If you have necessary medications and you have things that you need in order to survive, even if everything is good, then those are the things I would definitely be looking at right now. Very, very, very hard. I'd be looking at them in a focused manner to make sure that you had as much put away as you could and that you weren't going to deal with any supply chain issues in the future here where you might not be able to receive those items. And especially with pharmaceuticals, how do you expect things to work if China just cuts off the supply of APIs, right? Which are the active ingredients in pharmaceuticals. So you definitely need to understand that these countries that we're talking about tonight, when you're talking about China, when you're talking about Russia, when you're talking about even, Iran being in the mix, Iran, not so much. But what I'm trying to say is that these countries still do have quite a bit of control on quite a bit of the world's resources. And the reason that we have found ourselves in the position we're now in, not just economically, but population-wise, is because of the dependence on this global system, which could easily be shut off at any moment. And honestly, in order to support the level of population we have currently, this global system almost needs to be fully functional, or else we can't really supply everybody we need to be able to supply. Now, you could say, well, if the United States pulled back and only did isolationism, where we fed ourselves and used our own energy, that we should be okay. And that might be true for a certain amount of time. But at some point in time, the population still will exceed that eventual resource cap, which is something that we should all be concerned with, because that's the reason why we're so dependent on these other countries. Now, let's see. Random email says, plan for the best, prepare for the worst. Essential supplies like water, food, protection, and buying tangible goods to hedge against inflation. I mean, that's just good, common sense, basic advice, right? But these are the things that we should be considering. Food is huge. And I think I saw someone earlier, I want to say it was Lisa, said that, how much food should we have put away? And I mean, the bare minimum is 2 weeks, in my opinion. That's the bare minimum. And that's like what you should just have anyway. But I at least want to have 6 months worth of food. And right now I do, but at the same time, I'd like more. I think a year or two is really where you want to be, at the end of the day. And then even further past that, of course, once you get there, because why not? Food never becomes a problem as long as it's stored properly. But what I will say is that 6 months really should get you through point A and point B of quite a large crisis in many ways. It might not based on the crisis, but in many ways, by 6 months, you'll know where you stand, and you'll know if you had to leave or not, which is going to be a big factor because you can't take a 6 months worth of food with you if you do have to leave. And you should also have the ability to start some form of self-sustainment on your property or in your apartment or whatever you have going on, if you have that much time to buy yourself before having to move into that realm. Obviously, anything related to producing your own calories, gardening, livestock, anything like that, you have to invest in now before it's the emergency, because you're not going to just magically grow a garden perfectly the first time around. But you understand what I'm trying to say. By having 6 months to kind of work through the details, you have enough time to understand if that's actually going to be enough or not. Just my opinion, 6 months to me is like my minimum threshold. Once I get below that, I get very anxious, which I don't get below that anymore. But at one point in time, I did. And these are things that, you build up over time. And hopefully, eventually, you find yourself in a position to last a year, 2, 5, 10, 25, however long you feel you need. But at the end of the day, self-sustainment is really where it's at. Producing calories, gardening, livestock, and everything else that makes it so you don't even ever have to touch a grocery store again. That would be the way to go. But I would say 95% of people don't have access to what that is, or what's necessary to acquire that. And that's going to be land, investment, time, energy, property, all those things. Okay. So let's see here. Okay. Northern Girl Hobby says most Canadians will be shopping like mad fools this week. I'll be trying to up ends to get it ready. Yeah, and you know what? There might be some truth to that. So I think that if we see this war break out, one thing we can definitely expect is more panic buying, and I think that that should be an issue for any of us because we know what panic buying leads to. It leads to runs on the store. It leads to price increases. It leads to limits per item that you can purchase. So these are all things to get ahead of if there's things that you're still lacking in your preps based on what's going on out there right now. Okay. And I know a lot of people are live streaming right now too, is what my understanding is. And obviously I think that's a good thing because basically what it comes down to is that we are finding ourselves getting better information from our own community than we do from the mainstream media. And one thing I will say, I think I saw Marfugo News post this recently, and it was that, like they aren't repeating what the mainstream media is saying. It's actually that the mainstream media is finally reporting on what they've been saying for a long time. And I think there's a lot of truth to that because I think it's finally gotten to the point where these things are so public and so out there that they have to report on them even if they don't want to or even if they don't actually help support their agenda. It's just where we are right now as a society. And I think it's a good place for us to be, in all honesty. So, Mark Olson is asking about the chicken shortage. And, I don't have anything like pulled up right this second, but I do know that basically it's going to cause more price increases, and then we're seeing more of an issue when it comes to supplying meat of all kinds. And so any of these cascading effects that we're seeing from these different events all pile up and meet in one place. So yes, I've seen the news about the bird flu situation. I believe it was an outbreak in Georgia. That was the one they were talking about that I was looking at. And these things are culminating into more and more of a problem. It's just going to get worse. And I will say, I was out shopping recently, and it was like a bag of chicken wings. It was $25, and it was 5 pounds of chicken wings. And I don't know. I just feel like that's a lot for chicken wings. 5 pounds, $25. I don't know. I mean, chicken's not usually the most expensive meat, but here I was looking at $5 a pound for chicken wings, and it just felt very expensive for something that is mostly bone that you're paying for the weight on. So keep that in mind, okay? Arkansas lady says chickens are dying off in Arkansas as well. Let's see. Karen Perez says, I live in a tiny apartment in Los Angeles. I don't have much room. I'm doing what I can and trusting the rest of the Lord. And I think that is something a lot of apartment dwellers sharing. There's only so much space. There's only so much privacy. And there's only so much you're allowed to do to make your apartment yours. And it's honestly the same way in many ways when you rent a home. So keep that in mind because until you buy something, it's hard to invest in any of the upgrades you might want a home to have to become self-sustainable and to try to make it into what it is you need to be better prepared. That's one of the reasons why we bought a house. It wasn't just so I could say I have a home and I own a house or whatever. It was so I could modify it and then make the changes I needed in order to make it exactly what we needed, not only as a family, but as a family that wants to be better prepared. So honestly, I mean, it's very important in the sense of being able to really establish yourself, not to mention storage. Now I can store my thousands of pounds of stuff and not feel like I'm going to have to move it again every single, year or two, which is what we were doing before. Now, let's see. Everybody's freaking out about chicken, and I totally get it, okay? And now everyone's saying we should eat fruit bats. And, maybe that's exactly where this is leading. A new system of consumption, because there are things that are more sustainable than chicken, right? I would say crickets is something that a lot of people talk about. And in a recent movie I watched, it was like their main, meal was, fried cricket or grilled cricket or whatever it was. And I don't want to really be in a situation where that's my main source of food. So unfortunately, I feel like we are moving in that direction. Now, let's see. So Jim B is asking what happened to my eye, and I don't know what you're talking about because, I'm looking at it, and it kind of looks like maybe I have a black eye or something in the camera, but I don't. So maybe that's what you're referring to. But I think it's just a weird shadow, to be honest, Jim. So thanks for your concern. Jeff Davis says he is drunk. If that was true, Jeff, we'd be having a much better time. I guarantee you that. I wish it was true sometimes because I enjoy hanging out with you all, but I also find it to be unprofessional to be drunk on a live stream when we're talking about things that are relatively important. Which that's up to you guys, but Biden plans direct sanctions on Russia for Tuesday. And that is the newest development in this whole situation. We are going to go ahead and pull that out just because. But that's what they're saying. Now, Tuesday, these sanctions are coming. And I keep saying this, and I feel like everybody understands that these are the way we saber rattle at this point in time. But I'm not a big fan of the whole sanction talk because I don't think they care anymore. And it just makes everybody look pathetic, doesn't it? That's just my opinion. So Mr. USA Patriot 01 says buy fuel and stuff while you can. Patriot James, it won't let me necessarily say that one here on the stream, but you gave me flashbacks of Ace Ventura 2 when you talked about that like that. So good work on that. I'm ruining my memory for a little bit here. So Faux Real says, how will Russia respond when it comes to these sanctions? I don't think they care. So I don't think it's going to change anything about what they do or don't do. These sanctions were already a guarantee if they were to move into Ukraine. They already knew that. Then they said, well, we don't care. And they're doing it anyway. So, yeah, and deplorable T3% said the same thing. They don't care. And it's because no one cares. They are literally talking about money that's like worth less than it was 2 years ago anyway, right? The US dollar isn't worth crap right now compared to what it was before this whole mess, which, by the way, this whole mess that started in March of 2020, guess what? The economic impact of this mess, and completely due to leadership, not because of the crisis itself, but the way it was reacted to by the leadership, has now put us in a position where the outbreak of war is likely. And how big of a surprise is that to any of you? Because it shouldn't be at all. It's something we talked about over and over again when all this first started, because we all knew the economic implications of these decisions was what was going to be the biggest problem. And here we are, 2 years later, literally watching Russia possibly start a war here. And it's like, of course, I mean, this is just where it is, you know? And my apologies if some of the things we've said here in the preparedness community took longer than we expected to occur. That's generally how this works. Hey, this is a possibility. Well, he said that a year ago and it didn't happen. He's a liar. Okay, well, 2 years now and we're here. This is how this all works. And it's not because I'm not trying to say, you know, here, I told you so. What I'm trying to say is we have to be patient with these situations. And we can't just assume they're not going to happen because they didn't happen as fast as we assumed they should have. Now, Carl Miller says no one is watching China. Definitely not when it comes to the Olympics. I heard the ratings are terrible. So there's definitely some truth to what you're saying, but I agree. We all think that there's a possibility of something happening there while all this is going on because all of the attention is currently on Russia. And obviously China is a nation of opportunity, right, when it comes to making moves. So I don't doubt it. This is definitely a possibility. Craig Alicious, Russia didn't start this war. Okay. And there might be some validity to that. What I want to say is when it comes to that, I will 100% agree with the fact that the mainstream media and the Western media as a whole has definitely flamed the situation, right? They've definitely pushed the scenario into a more incendiary situation via their reporting, right? Every day for the last 3 weeks, it's been a war drumbeat of this is going to happen. Russia is doing this. Russia's doing this. Russia's doing this. And Russia, look, I'm not trying to defend Russia. I don't want to get caught up in all that, all right? But what I'm trying to say is that Russia has even said, hey, Western media, chill out. And Ukraine has even said, hey, Western media, chill out, because you guys are literally like over here saying all these things are happening that aren't necessarily happening or haven't happened yet. And then what happens? You turn around and every other Western media outlet is saying, oh, Russia's going to war. Russia's going to invade. Russia's doing this. Russia's doing that. So if anyone wants to say anyone started this war, I think that, yeah, I mean, you could say the media probably did in many ways. And even right this second, I mean, there is technically no war yet, but we're watching a live update report on what is happening right this second, thanks to the Western media, right? And Russian ambassador to UN defends Putin, accuses Ukraine of risking war. So, you know, the blame game is going to go on and on and on. And that's just how this works, right? And deception is key when it comes to war. We all know all that. But what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, it might be some truth to that Russia didn't start it, but that doesn't mean they're not going to still go with it. And it seems like things are getting a little bit crazier now. So Let's see here. Everybody in the chat, look, I don't expect you guys to always agree with me. I don't. And I don't expect everything I say to be exactly what you are thinking. But I do think that as a collective community of people who want to be prepared, that having these conversations is important, and that it does take some honesty, and it also takes what's the best way to say it? Some gumption to self-reflect and to realize some of these things once in a while. Jason Culver, thanks. I really appreciate it. Listen, I don't like to admit when I'm wrong. I don't like to, have to make an about face and be like, sorry, and I don't like apologizing either, because of the way it's been changed over the last few years, in the sense of cancel culture, and, everyone wanting everyone to apologize for things they said in the past, or for things they, joked about, or whatever it is. I think that, apologies have become almost like a martyrdom more than anything else. But what I will say, is that we have to once in a while, check ourselves, and we have to once in a while understand that we don't know everything, and that we can't just assume because we have a gut feeling or a strong opinion on something that it is the only way to approach a situation. So I want to make sure that I'm very adamant about that. We have to be open-minded. We just have to. I have to be open-minded enough to be as prepared as possible, that I have to assume that I'm wrong about something, even if I know for a fact that it's true, just in case that other possibility exists. And that is exactly how we should be approaching these situations, okay? Craig Alicious, what you meant is that NATO has surrounded Russia and then funded the Ukrainian overthrow in 2014 to install their own puppets. Thank you. And yes, I think that there is a lot of controversy surrounding the situation, because we do know that NATO has expanded past what they agreed to or agreed with Russia on back when I believe everything was separated post World War II. So these are things that have historical consequences, and we might be watching those unfold right now, finally, at this point in time. But there's a lot of interesting stuff we have to keep an eye on. And what I want to say is that all of you will do yourself a lot of good if you just keep preparing. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you and I, we're all small people on the totem pole, right? We're all pawns in this game of, chess masters. But the more we prepare, the easier our life is going to be, and the more ready we'll be for these negative consequences of everybody else's bad decisions, which is really what this is all coming down to. Bad decisions on the part of leadership all around the world are pushing people into terrible situations. What's happening in Canada with a basic police state being, put into place at this point. What's happening in Russia and Ukraine right now, where leadership is creating a situation that's leading to a possible war. What's happening here in our own country, where inflation is through the roof and nobody can agree on simple concepts any longer. We're all in a terrible game of chess, where the people who are actually playing the game don't know the rules. And that is a big problem for all of us. So, Rebecca Snavely, coffee is magic. I 100% agree with you. And I think on that note, we're at an hour. I think that's a good time to wrap this one up. So, you guys, I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. And I do want to say, just as kind of like a farewell real quick, but when it comes to channel support, I'm getting a lot of different ideas and offers and opportunities with channel support. And with the uncertainty of these times and with the economic situations we're dealing with, of course, I'm going to explore some of these opportunities, because I feel that it's going to put me in a better position to be prepared. So I hope you understand why some of those things are occurring. But I do want you all to know that if you ever have a negative experience with anybody I'm affiliated with, in the sense of, let's see, like EcoFlow or Off Grid Track, Mira Safety, Flee the City, any of those other companies that I've worked with periodically here and there, make sure to let me know. Send me a contact form. Let me know. I don't want to be affiliated with people if they're not going to take care of the people that I affiliate with. And that is something I definitely want to be adamant about. So just keep that in mind. I definitely want all of you to be properly taken care of if it ever comes to working with any of my affiliates or my sponsors. And if anything negative was to arise because of a bad relationship there, it's something I feel I would like to know about, so that way I can make better decisions moving down the road if that's things I want to explore further. So hopefully that well, makes sense to everybody. But thank you guys so much for being here. Had a great conversation. Anything else you guys need? Let's see if tomorrow is a little bit more of an intense day than what today is so far. And what I will say is that tomorrow's video is about what I would do if I knew SHTF was going to be tomorrow. But maybe I should have released it today, considering all the developments over the last few hours. Who knows? And that video, like I said, it might actually get pushed back too, because if things get too hot and crazy over there, I might have to address that before I put out a video just about basic preparedness. So either way, I appreciate all of you, and I will definitely see you here again soon. That's going to be it for Magic Prepper.